Read Me, Part 2. Let's get straight into that. I sat in my car in a coffee shop drive-thru, staring out the window while watching the rain pouring down my windshield. I had this grotesque feeling that I had been given a most sinister gift. Whenever I breathed in now, I could see the rattling of glass or the tremors of random items on my dining room table. A thundering godlike gift for the ages. I proclaimed I would never touch that damn book again. It had been a week since I last felt its pages, and yet it still taunted me. Yet the fear only bred a curiosity in me. I got to the drive-thru window, paid, then took my coffee, and drove on home. I opened the door to my messy house. I had not felt like cleaning, cooking, or doing much else for myself since discovering that book. It fascinated me that there it was, magic born by telling stories. It was not just any stories, but true stories where all the characters had souls that could only possess us by retelling their stories. And then they could live once more, and evermore. When the rain began to pour down and nearly flooded my street. I had planned to do yard work, but since I was now alone in my old cottage, held captive by a downpour, I drank my coffee instead of the book. I had placed it on my bookshelf, but it called out to me. I turned my eyes away from it and sipped on my coffee. And then I heard singing. At first, it was barely audible, and then it got louder and louder. And I stood up thinking, who in the world could be singing outside in this storm? I looked out my window, but I did not see anyone. And then I felt it, something tapping me on the shoulder. I quickly turned to find no one there. Maybe I was going insane after my first bout with that book. La la la. The singing continued in a soprano voice, and then I heard what sounded like waves crashing in my ears. The sound got louder and louder until I thought my eardrums were going to split in two. "Damn you!" I screamed, and all at once the sound stopped as abruptly as it had begun. I looked to see that I had cracked the coffee table and my wooden bookshelf in half with my scream. It was the same bookshelf that housed that atrocity. My new gift of thunder vibration, could that have been what caused the singing and the ocean's crashing to end? Did I now have some sort of control over whatever this was? I looked closer at the bookshelf. There was water leaking from the shelf where that book was. If this wasn't a call to action, I don't know what was. I reluctantly walked over to the bookshelf, which now leaned to one side, and picked up the Read Me book. I sat with it on my lap and then tried to open it. The pages were hard to get open, but when I did, salty seawater fell out of it, and a small fish that was now flopping on the ground beneath me. I picked it up and examined it. Was this real? I went to my kitchen and found an old fishbowl my daughter had when she was a little girl. I quickly filled the bowl with water and then dropped the fish inside. I looked around for some sea salt and tossed that into it as well. My guess was it was a fish from the ocean. It was yellow and black with several stripes. It seemed contented to be back inside water. I heard what sounded like men yelling at one another, and I could make out the sound of bellboys in the distance. I walked over to the couch and sat down, picking up the book. I looked down at it and then noticed it was still wet but was now drying at my touch. The last time I read the story aloud, I narrated it for my podcast, but today I felt it needed more of a personal approach. I looked down and gulped. The story was titled, Ripping of Flesh. I was born in Maine, where all the other lobsters live. I'm joking. Of course I'm not a lobster. Although you live here, you probably eat enough lobster to become one. I had never been much of a water person, although my parents raised me right by a dock that led straight out into the sea. I was never much of a swimmer either, although I knew enough not to drown. Sicily, my father would say, you will drown one of these days if you don't learn how. I ignored him, of course. And by the time I was 17, I was still not much of a swimmer, but I knew I would be off to college soon enough. All the way to Phoenix for college for music. I loved to play the piano and sing the tune of Stevie Nicks, Bob Dylan, and randomly Loretta Lynn. The idea of living so far from the nearest water source sounded like heaven, especially if I never had to endure the horrible sound of a boy bell ever again in my life. And so my story began on a Friday night. It was getting closer to the end of summer. You could already see leaves changing and the temperature dropping. Yet, my friends, my crew, you could say, decided on a late-night boat trip. I wasn't very fond of being out on a small boat in the daytime, let alone at night where you couldn't see beneath you. Black water under a black starless sky was what waited us on that night. I had this sick feeling in my gut that I couldn't place. My friends Janine and Samantha were with us, as well as our other two friends, Jason and Chase. Chase was the boat captain for the night, steering us into the bay to what seemed further and further from dry land lights. Chase slowed the engine, and we were now floating. I realized why when he pulled out a joint from his pocket. "Anyone want to hit this?" "Sure," Samantha said, taking a hit and then passing it to me. I shook my head. The last time I smoked a joint, it made me sick, and so I chose to pass. "More for us," Chase laughed. I rolled my eyes and continued watching the water. I tried not to look at it, but I was growing increasingly nervous. I listened to my friends chatting about prom and how homecoming would be a blast now that we were seniors. I barely heard them, though. I suddenly noticed a massive wave coming towards the boat about 70 feet away. It dipped down and rippled in our direction. Then another wave rose closer to us. My first thought was sharks. It seemed irrational, but I had been increasingly fearful of them since I saw my father get bit by one when fishing. It was a small shark, but knowing that things with teeth could spill your blood, it was traumatizing. I watched for a while longer, and then I no longer saw the wave. It must have been something way further out than we were causing it. I tried to concentrate on the conversation we were all having when I felt the boat jerk. "What was that?" Jason asked, looking at me and then to Chase. "That's nothing. Probably a storm was coming soon. We can go back after I finish this." I wanted to go back now. I was too scared of looking like a dork in front of my friends, though. I held on to my seat and breathed a breath of relief when Chad began to start the engine back up. We were heading back to land, and then it happened. Something was following our boat. Something with amber eyes. I tried to ignore it, thinking it was a glimmer from the lights in the distance. There was no distinguishing between the two amber glimmers coming from under the water. And soon they were only a few feet from me where I was sitting. I stared into those eyes, almost frozen by their enchanting gaze. I heard what sounded like music, and I fell into a trance until Janine tapped my shoulder, asking me if I were okay. I snapped out of it, and when I looked down at the water, I was overcome with an intense fear. I backed away from the edge as those eyes got closer, but as I stood up, I lost my balance and fell into the water. The cold, dark water embraced me, shocking my body into adrenaline, and I went under. But soon I found my way to the surface. I choked, flopping my hands and feet and trying to stay above water to see my friends. I heard them in the distance screaming for me. "There she is!" Samantha screamed. I could hear the boat, and I was getting closer to my friends as they were making their way towards me, and then it happened. Several large, I don't know how to describe them, emerged from the water and attacked my friends. In a freedom frenzy, like a pack of giant piranhas, they split open Chase's neck and devoured Jason's leg first, and then Janine screamed, holding her hand out to me as two of them split her in half mid-air. I had no idea what these grotesque things were. They had the bottom half similar to a typical mermaid. The top half was humanoid, but they had no hair or distinguishable top halves like breasts. But I got the impression that these were the females of their species. Their faces were not hideous, or if anything, they were quite beautiful. Chiseled cheekbones like supermodels, and complexions were perfect and fair, and appeared to glow in the night, blinking on and off like that of an electric eel. Their mouths were the color of pink roses, shaped in a perfect heart shape, until they opened them. When they opened each of their mouths, it nearly split their faces in half to reveal large pointed sets of teeth. Their eyes rolled back into their heads, going black as they bit into my friend's flesh. There were at least 3 rows of teeth on the top and the bottom, and I watched on in shock as blood stained the water all around me, creating a murky black film. And then, as I was reeling from seeing my best friends in the world murdered at these creatures' hands, one of them noticed me. It swam closer to me and then bit into my neck, and as the creature bit into me, it stopped abruptly, screaming in pain. The boat engine was still running and it cut into her. When it did, the engine stopped and they all scurried into the deep below me. I don't recall how I got back to land. I don't remember any of it. And when I woke up, my parents were in my hospital room, on either side of my bed, watching over me. I sat up feeling insatiably hungry. My head was sore, and my body ached. My father had a nurse bring me some dinner, and I gulped it down so fast, they got me in seconds. When I had eaten all of my food, I closed my eyes. My parents let me rest as I fell into a deep sleep. I kept dreaming of my friends and trying to save them at any cost. It was only a dream, however. I woke up in the middle of the night, feeling very itchy all over my body. One of those things had bit me, especially in the spot. I rang for the nurse and she came in to examine me. I explained what the issue was and so the doctor was called. Now they thought that I had some sort of infection, and as I now had a terrible fever. They took my blood and within a few hours it was determined that they had no idea what was wrong with me. The itching subsided within a few days and I was sent home, and my doctor thought that perhaps I had some sort of allergic reaction to something I had eaten that night. Well, there was no firm explanation for it. My neck healed quickly, and there was only a scar now where the creature had bitten me. It was strange to my doctor that I had healed so fast after such a traumatic injury to one's flesh. If it had been just 1 centimeter deeper, it would have hit my artery. A few days passed and I had my friends and family filtering into my house, some grieving over our friends, some family checking in on me to ensure that I was okay. One of my visitors was Chase's older brother Jake, and he had been a sea captain for a large ocean rig. He had seen everything out there, but he wanted to talk to me about what had killed his brother, as I was the last survivor. And I told my tale of devastation. Jake nodded, taking my hand. I believe your story, Cecily, and I promise I'll find these monsters, and I will kill them all. Jake had been the only one that believed my story. My parents just shrugged it off, thinking I had been so traumatized and hallucinated the entire thing, when I stopped talking about it. I missed school for the next 2 weeks and I lost interest in nearly everything. Then something happened. I was standing in the shower, washing, when I grabbed the shampoo. I levered up my hair when all of a sudden, my hair began to fall out in clumps. I got out of the shower after rinsing off and combed my hair as best I could, but it would not stop falling out. My mother took me back to the doctor because not only was my hair falling out, but I was growing thinner each day, even though I was eating everything in sight. I'm afraid that fish that bit her may have given her a parasite. It wasn't a fish. Mum, it was a monster. As she had ignored me and kept on bitching to the doctor, I rolled my eyes, pulling my ball cap down over my face. My hair wasn't the only issue. My skin began to deteriorate as well. This is probably the grossest thing that happened to me. My skin began to get scaly and fall off in large patches. I could peel off my skin until it bled. I had scabs and bleeding patches of skin all over my body. The doctors didn't know if I had contracted a flesh-eating disease or what. I spent hours crying in my bed, wishing that I would die. And nothing helped my skin, and soon my flesh was falling from my body. And although it fell from my body like a snake layer after layer, it didn't hurt. It was as if it had rotted to my bones. My lungs had nearly burst from my chest as I was now having trouble breathing. It was almost as if breathing had become a challenge, and I was hooked up to oxygen tanks and breathing machines, and nothing helped me breathe. Then my eyes changed. I was having trouble seeing well. I had never worn glasses a day in my life, but suddenly I was nearsighted. My eyes stung, and I noticed them changing colour, as if they were dimming. Instead of a pristine blue that they had always been, they were now green and yellow. The whites of my eyes always seemed bloodshot, yet all I did was sleep. It was to the point that I could no longer return to school. I had to stay home completing classes online, after all our daydreams of homecoming dances and prom. My life was now one of death and decay. Then I decided I would go out at night and throw myself to the mercy of those amber-eyed bitches. Maybe they would eat me like they ate my friends. I only knew I could not live like this way any longer. I walked towards the dock slowly as I could, barely move without my body falling apart. Each step, clumps of myself fell from my body in a disgusting array of vengeance. My salty tears were my only comfort. I crawled towards the edge of the dock, and when I finally got to the edge, I threw my body into the sea. I let myself fall as deeply as I could go, and then I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. But for the first time in weeks, my lungs did not feel like they were on fire. I was able to feel no pain. My flesh began to feel like it was healing, and then something strange happened. I began to feel like I was floating above my body. My soul was leaving my body. I could now watch on as I swam in the water, and then I saw them. It was like these creatures had a sense that I was there and that I wanted them. It was as if they could read my mind, and they joined me, surrounding me, and they carried my body out into the sea. The amber-eyed monsters were now all around me, and when I woke, my feet were swollen as I had never seen before. My flesh melted together, and my bones felt like they were breaking. I recall screaming from the pain as my inability to understand what was happening to me overtook my mind and body. I woke to realize I had slowly become one of these amber-eyed monsters. My hands were now webbed, my legs were now wedging together, although they had not wholly merged. I was still half mermaid, half human freak. My hair was always on my head, in patches. I felt like an infant in the womb, only half formed but not utterly human, as though still in its lizard-like fetus stage. And there was no reason for my transformation. What sort of infection could cause it? I had loved fictional stories like the Wolfman, and there was no story of a girl becoming a mermaid after being bitten, or a piranha lady. And would I even live through it? And that is when I fell into a deep sleep. It could have been days, weeks, or even months. I woke to a new body. The first thing I noticed was that my flesh had healed entirely. The second was that I could breathe underwater. I also noticed that all of my hair on my body was now gone, and all of my distinguishing features, too. I settled in with my new pack of piranha maids, and I noticed that each one of them had a hidden talent to lure food to them. You want to know what mine was? I could sing. On the first hunt for food, we travelled together in sync. Our minds melted with one another. We were territorial with hive minds, similar to a school of fish or a swarm of bees. I noticed some of them used talents like speed to surround their prey or strength. Some used charm or hypnotism to get their game. I sang beautifully to lure fishermen on boats to give up their catches to us quickly. Strangely enough, we were not frequent eaters of human flesh, although you grow a taste for it after time, and only when there is nothing else. By now, I had long forgotten my friends. I was someone else, and I was also about to meet my fate. What must have been months or years with this pack I now travelled with, we found ourselves in one of the worst winters. There were barely any fish to eat in the waters. There had been a chemical spill in the water just off the coast, and so all of our natural food sources were now extinct. One night, in a fit of desperation and hunger, we decided to prey upon a ship carrying cargo. We knew there were men on board who would make a tasty morsel. One of the first of the sirens noticed the captain all alone on the deck, and so she began to concentrate, speaking with him with her mind, as she lured him towards us. As the poor bastard fell into the trap she'd set, I noticed something from behind him. It was a man, a very tall man, and I recognized him immediately. It was Chase's brother, Jake. He shot off large spears that you could use in spearfishing. They were large spears, and as I looked at his face, he was taking pleasure out of this. He was doing this deliberately to cause pain. And before I knew it, one of them hit my ribcage, and as it did, he pulled with all of his might and dragged my flesh onto the boat. When he caught me, he grinned as he speared me to death. "That is for my brother!" He had no idea he had killed me. After all, I was unrecognizable now. And I bled out until there was nothing left of me or my young life. I took a deep breath after reading Cicely's story. Tears welled up in my eyes, and as they did, I felt the strangest urge to sing and play my old upright piano. And this time I knew what my gift was. I looked down at my tears dropping onto the pages, but when they did, I could hear her whispering, "Thank you." More pages disappeared from the book, and more blood emerged from the book and back into my previously injured finger. I looked down as the book began to show me another story. The Murder Show. To which I decided I would wait on that. Instead, I'd take some time to relax as the rain poured down all around me and tickle the ivories. Wow. Certainly another one. Wow. What an absolutely interesting, thought-provoking and spine-tingling story this is turning out to be. Of course, a huge thank you to the author, BlackFridaysWitch13, over on Reddit No Sleep, for allowing me to narrate this incredible series. Certainly one of the most refreshing writers I think I've found this year. And I really look forward to more of your work in the future. And of course, I hope you enjoy my rendition. Guys and girls as ever, you know the drill. Please let us know what you thought down below in the comments box. Please do like and share. It really does help build the channel and our community further. And why not hashtag TeamFEAR and DMT's Cryptid Crew. If you're an aspiring writer or would just like to have a crack at things like myself, then please do get in touch with me at the brand new contact email, which is, as on screen, contactthedeadone@gmail.com. I really look forward to hearing from you. As ever guys, I hope you're all well and happy, fighting fit, and taking a fight back to life. But above all, remember, be safe, not sorry.